question. Is the recording going to work? I think the recording's going to work. JJ, you can talk now.
Does it not look weird like last time?
No, it's actually like, doing the thing that it's supposed to be doing.
That's
yeah,
good.
That was weird. Okay.
It's always good when it does the right thing.
Yep. Anyway, I'm Seth, also known as Dr. Zombrain, and I have this really strange kid in my Zoom call right now. Who are you?
My name's Jeff. I come from the sewers, and I like eating bologna.
Bravo! And what are his... Okay.
I'm JJ, also known as Junior Wolf. Thank you.
And today we are covering... I looked it up. Intellectual property. IPs.
Ah, intellectual.
Yes. It did take me a minute to find it, because when I looked up IP, it was all the IP address for, internet stuff. So
yeah,
it took
that's
a minute
not
to find
exactly
that.
what we're looking for.
No. Anyway, so I do have some information on what that is, some stuff pulled up, and we're going to talk about some specific examples. But generally, I think we can both agree, IPs have been kind of in a rough place, especially after COVID, past few years. They've been at a rough place creating new IPs specifically.
This is true. We're in a world where in order to make money, you have to have something that's already successful. And so they're taking all the things that have already found success and just carrying those forward instead of trying to come up with new things based on what they've made that become successful.
They're milking a lot of properties. We can kind of see that with, for the anime community, Naruto, right? Like, Boruto did not need to exist. Like, the amount of people that bash it for the fact that, one, the animation sucks. Like, the quality is just terrible. But two, the way he became Hokage, all of Naruto and Naruto Shippuden, he wanted to be Hokage. JJ, you've watched a good bit of Naruto, the original, exactly. And can you agree? He kind of wants to become Hokage.
Yeah, eventually.
That's kind of the whole point. And then he just gets married. He's not even at the ceremony to become Hokage, and then he's just here doing paperwork. It's sad. It's really sad, and it's just because they're milking it. It had an ending. It had a pretty good ending with Naruto getting married, and then they're like, nah, we need more, lots more, and it's gonna keep going on for a while. And that's just one example, and there are dozens, we are going to be talking about a lot. But first, do you have any other points before I kind of explain what an IP is?
I mean, I feel like that should be the starter points, that we don't confuse people what we're talking about. So if you want to go ahead and do that.
True. Yeah, I'll get there. So I got an article pulled up. This is recent, this year, July 27th. What is intellectual property? Intellectual property is a broad category description of a set of intangible assets owned by protected by a company or individual from outside use of implementation without consent. An intangible asset is non-physical asset that a company or person owns. Now, there are some types of these. One of them, patents, trademarks, there's some others, copyrights, and then trade secrets. So like the Krabby Patty secret formula.
Mm-hmm.
And the other article also talked about franchises, which I think is the big part of this intellectual property that we're going to talk about with franchises.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because franchises is pretty much the only part of it that really matters, because almost every franchise is copyrighted, is patented, stuff like that. So it's all encapsulated within the category of franchise.
Yeah. So let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much covers it. It's also important that for intellectual property, like it said, it's non-physical. So that means something some of these copyrights and stuff like that and patents can be on machines, but the ones we are going to be talking about when in the category of intellectual property would be animated characters, like Naruto. That'd be an intellectual property. Mm-hmm. He is fiction. He is not real. But something like a car, even if you created that is a physical thing, like an Audi. Yeah. That is not an intellectual property. So I think that covers what it is. Anything else you want to kind of put in there before we start getting to some specific examples of why we think we need to talk about this right now?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I don't know. There's a lot of IPs that I think we need to mention at the start, because obviously we're gonna get into a lot of them, like the ones with news that came out recently. A little tease there. It's dramatic. But in terms of some that have closed down, I feel like obviously the one that comes immediately to mind, if we jump back to something like Gravity Falls, that was an IP at its perfection. I feel like they got that so right and then closed it down at the right time, right? Like that is,
Yeah.
I feel like that's the perfect example of an IP running its course in the right duration.
Yeah. But that's a good example. But the reason we need to talk about that, that's very few and far between when we have the
Exactly.
really good examples. We have discussed this a few times actually with our private conversations that we have, and I feel like it's important enough that we should do an episode on it. They're in a rough spot with, like I said, with the milking. We just don't have much new stuff anymore. We were trying to think. One of the very few new ones is Troll Hunters. That's like it took us a while, but that's like one of the only ones we can really think of that's brand new. Then we also have other stuff that's coming out, like I'm gonna go into it, Scooby Doo. So again, this might be a little controversial, but stuff instead of making new characters, that's the problem. Like these people aren't making new characters, they're just rewriting old ones. Scooby Doo, they're race swapping so many of their characters. Like Shaggy is black, his name's Norvell, and he has dreads. Like that's not,
Yeah,
and it's
I
not
feel
that
like
there's something wrong with that, but why make characters that already exist like that instead of just making a new mystery solving game? Just make a new one. Another one, I don't know if you want to talk about this one, Little Mermaid.
I was literally just gonna bring that up. Yeah, I feel like that's
Yeah.
what everybody's doing right now. Like the Scooby Doo, that's Warner Brothers, and the Little Mermaid, that's Disney, and those are pretty much the two like kings of the media world right now. So everybody's doing it. It's like it's not just one company that's like overly corrupt. It's like the entire Hollywood media in general is
Yeah.
obsessed with just in this concept of not making new characters. Like they're so scared that they'll fail that they're just like, okay, let's take a character that's already popular, change him a little bit, and then put him in a new show.
And with the Little Mermaid, again, we don't have anything wrong with having a black Little Mermaid. It's the fact that when you look at the actual foundation of what the story comes from, the character is white. I forget what was the specific area that they're from. The Little Mermaid's supposed to be based in.
Oh gosh, here, let me look it up. I knew it at one point.
He's gonna Google that. But like that's the problem. It's not the fact that she's black, but that's just not where the character's coming from. Like Scooby Doo, it's worked for decades and decades. And then they got to switch it. Like that's why I personally didn't like Scoob. Okay,
It's
JJ
from
found the
Danish folklore.
so that's kind of like now okay, cool. Another group of people are getting representation. But what about that group of people? Now they're getting
Exactly.
bashed.
What about
like,
the Danish people?
make a new character. That's the problem. And that doesn't happen anymore. Characters are getting milked. Stories are getting milked. Like the amount of times, like I'm going to pull up, I don't know, this isn't the best example, but for an example, you know how Captain America Civil War, that was pretty good. And then we see Batman versus Superman right there. Like two practically identical stories.
Yep.
And that's happening all over the media world. That's happening in video games. That's happening in movies. That's happening in shows. That's happening in books. It is everywhere. Another example that I'm going to bring up. I know JJ doesn't know this as well, but you can probably agree with how little you know about Call of Duty. The reason Modern Warfare 2019 did well is because it was Modern Warfare. They're milking these franchises with the name of these subcategories. Cold War, you probably heard of that one. It's Black Ops Cold War. And the only reason it did well-ish is because it's Black Ops. They can't even make a new video game subseries without having it milked from another one that did well and had its time.
I feel like a lot of in the games industry, I feel like it's not nearly as bad as like movies and TV because with games there's like the foundation of gaming today is indie developers, and because of that there are so many unique projects coming in and out of the gaming industry. So sure, we have big franchises like your Call of Duties, your Halos, your Assassin's Creeds, like all those big ones. But then like there are thousands upon thousands of indie games pouring into consoles and PCs because of platforms like Steam and, you know, Microsoft allowing them on. So I feel like...
And Epic Games, especially like bringing some of these other smaller games like Fall Guys and Rocket League, they had their studios, but they're definitely becoming much bigger with being partnered with Epic Games. Gaming definitely isn't the main problem. We're going to talk a lot more about the movies and some of these other things, but it is there. I don't know how you feel, but like you can sort of see like these IPs that aren't new but just refreshed. Pokemon and Mario. These have so many. We can talk about the Mario movie in a little bit, but it's just instead of making a brand new character, Nintendo's just keeping these specific IPs, these franchises, these patents and trademarks to these characters and franchise and just general with their movies, games, shows, books, etc. They just keep copying it and just making new of that instead of making a new character. Mm-hmm. The amount of Mario games we have and Pokemon games, they're doing well, but imagine if Nintendo did make a new game. That'd be kind of interesting to see where they would go, but they haven't. They haven't made a big new game in how long? They just make new ones or updating ones that they already have.
New Animal Crossing, new Mario, new Zelda. It's just constant rehashes of that franchise instead of making a new one.
But again, that's a little bit of a different experience because they are doing that well compared to some others. The Pokemon are decent, like new Pokemon, new story, new gyms, all this. Sometimes a new, like Yu-Gi-Oh, right? That's going, but you get your XYs, then you get your synchros, then you get your pendulum summons, then it changes each time and it makes it fresh enough. But there's so many times that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And it feels very unnecessary.
The thing with the Nintendo ones are those franchises are built upon the basis of never dying down. Like, they built it so that it does not have to have a closing point for this IP because they can keep adding new things, changing things up, and it'll still feel fresh because it's such a broad spectrum. Whereas something like a movie, you can't really rehash that too many times because you're going to end up having to cross over the same story beats again, and it's just not going to sit right with the audience.
I haven't seen them, but I know the Halloween movies are not are not fantastic.
Talk about those, yeah.
For the example of how they're doing stuff to try to defeat Jason. I'm not going to say it because we're on LBC radio, but they're doing different things, and it's like, guys, did you not see the last dozen movies? This doesn't work.
It's like this does not work. Something new.
We threw bombs at this guy, and he just walks it off. Your little tiny kitchen knife ain't gonna do squat.
Indeed.
And that's just because it's a big series, it's a big IP, and they just keep copying and rehashing it. What's some other ones that we should really explain?
I feel like another good new example. I know you're not a fan of it, but the Winnie the Pooh horror movie that is currently being made.
My childhood.
I feel like
rest in peace, my childhood.
This is an argumentative one because I know a lot of people are excited to see an IP that was made for kids move into a different genre. Because for anyone who doesn't know, Winnie the Pooh is now officially in the public domain. Tigger is not. He was added to the franchise.
Yes.
After.
Okay. We're good.
So
we're good.
Tigger
we're
is
good.
still
That was
patented.
literally my baby bedroom. Everyone has their theme when they're a baby. That was Tigger for me.
Yeah. But Winnie the
JJ knows
Pooh
this,
and
but
adjacent characters, apart from Tigger, are in the public domain. So anybody can use those characters in a original story. So they cannot rehash the original Winnie the Pooh show in any way. They cannot take the scripts from that and reimagine them. They have to take the characters specifically and put them in a new story, new environment, which is what they are doing with this horror movie. They have turned Winnie the Pooh into a, how do I put this? He's not interested in honey anymore.
Hey, JJ, when do you think Winnie the Pooh came out?
1955.
1926.
Whoa.
Which explains why it's in the public domain.
Yeah.
It takes a long time. I think it's I don't know the specific number. That's not really the point. I think it's 7,500 years till it becomes public, because that's kind of where some of these big stories that we read in high school English class and stuff like that. That's because they're in the public domain because they're so old.
Yeah.
But anyway,
but
random interesting fact of your day: Winnie the Pooh is way, way, way older than all of us.
Indeed.
Winnie the Pooh is older than World War II.
That's crazy.
Yeah. My brain died.
But yeah, I know a lot of people are excited for that movie. I know a lot of people aren't. But it's definitely an interesting aspect to look at in terms of IP, because you're taking something in a new direction with the same characters.
Yes. So that's what's the big thing that we really want to see right now? That's kind of the question. That's the new characters. Mm-hmm. Marvel is not doing it well.
Not really.
Marvel is taking the idea of having these characters, this team, the original Avengers. We got Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, Hawkeye, Black Widow, and Thor. Am I missing anyone? It's pretty much that's the thing, right? Okay. But now we got Kate Bishop and, well, Thor's gone, I guess. Are we going to have the kid?
Maybe. Who knows?
Kid going to join? Spider-Man. Who are the other ones? She-Hulk.
Yeah. I would have said Wanda, but
she's dead. JK. Or is she? We don't know. Doctor Strange, maybe? Like, he's still prevalent.
He's still kicking.
There's some other ones.
Ironheart?
Definitely. Ironheart, yep. Shang-Chi, maybe.
Yeah,
right? Maybe that could be like the new maybe that's the new Doctor Strange. That mystical arts guy. New team. Half the characters kind of suck.
Yeah.
Not the characters themselves aren't terrible, but it's like Iron Man shouldn't be replaced by like Peter Parker.
I feel like
there's definitely other
Marvel's gone down the road
used.
of quantity over quality, unfortunately, because originally we were getting around 2 to 3 Marvel movies per year, and now we're getting 2 shows plus 3 movies a year, which is far more hours than we were getting in the past. And I feel like because of that, not only their script writing has gone down, directing's gone down, casting is still
look at the
pretty
CGI.
okay.
Yeah, casting I'm not too worried about. Like all these new characters, their acting's fine. It's just the story-wise itself, like it kind of feels redundant. Certain parts aren't necessary. The CGI, like I remember watching the first of the Phase 4 like shows, WandaVision, phenomenal. And then the next one is Falcon and Winter Soldier, and I'm like, this came after?
Yeah. Then Black Widow comes out, and it's like, this is like a high school project.
Like, the CGI was so bad. Like, they're forgetting shadows half the time. Like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
And it's because they're trying to make more instead of, like you said, like, their quality isn't there. They want in quantity.
Yeah. Making
that money. They don't want to give the viewers a good experience. They just want to pump out as much as they can.
I mean, do you remember before Endgame came out, after Infinity War, there was no projects in the making. I think it was, a 6-month period after Infinity War before Endgame came out, and they had nothing else slated whatsoever until Phase 4 other than Endgame. And that's because all of the funding since they ended on Infinity War went into that movie. They like dumped so much money into that.
I can see that.
And it paid off because they had the CGI phenomenal, story writing phenomenal, arcs phenomenal.
The actors, like that probably went into how many actors they needed for that specific movie. Like it is insane fantastic. The amount of people in that.
And I feel like
it paid off.
They're looking at it in terms of like, it's because the scale of the movie was so big. No, it's because you put effort into it. If they put the same amount of effort into any given show, like, heck, if they put it into Hawkeye could have been as big as, I'd say, Infinity War if they put the effort in to make it that. But I feel like they just didn't give it enough time or money to get there.
I think you see that a lot. People joke a lot in anime. They always spend a little bit more time on the fights because that's like kind of on shonen anime specifically. They spend a lot more time on the fights because that's kind of the big part, right? And the amount of jokes, it's like when animators get time, and then it's just this beautifully animated scene. It stinks that they can't do that all the time because they're forced to pump out these episodes on like a daily basis.
Yeah.
So what are some other IPs that I'm throwing you on the spot? What's some other good IPs that are recent? I'd say after 2018.
Current or recent? Like started after? Or
after 2018.
So started
first
after
saw
2018.
Them. Yes.
Oh gosh.
I know I'm throwing you on the spot because there's, like I said at the beginning, it is very few and far between.
Yeah. Because like even all the new shows that have cropped up are spin-offs of something else. Like even if it's not the same characters, it's a spin-off of a previous show. So like
that SpongeBob show with Patrick.
Like Cobra Kai is a spin-off of Karate Kid.
I'd count Cobra Kai. But
it's a direct sequel.
It is, but it's compared to like a movie, like movie 1 then movie 2. It definitely it's in the same universe, but compared to something like Marvel where it is very like they still have the characters
they do
off
in Cobra Kai. It is the original Karate Kid and his rival, all grown up.
Is it?
Yeah.
I thought it was the kids. I thought it was like new JoJo's.
Well, it is, but the main characters are the original characters from the movies.
Oh. Rip.
Yeah, a little bit.
As you guys can tell, I didn't watch it.
You need to watch it. It's good.
Maybe. That's the maybe on watching it. Not that it's not good. I see it's fantastic. My prelude to theological and biblical thinking teacher constantly talks about it.
It's great.
And he tells the family, if you're not there, I'm watching it without you. Sorry. Okay, so movie-wise or game-wise or anything.
I mean, obviously Scarlet Nexus.
What a surprise.
What a surprise. But no, they have an anime and a game that were both mildly successful.
I count that. There's that one. I'd say Owl House.
Yeah, that's
a
good
House.
one, yeah.
Now, speaking of Owl House, this is completely off topic. I don't know if you saw. Season 3 came out, and it did really well. I don't know if you saw it. It was on YouTube. They streamed the premiere on YouTube.
Dang.
Their official channel, Disney Channel, YouTube page. It did really well, and I saw something that apparently one of the executives was like, oh, yeah, it wasn't bad. It didn't do bad. It did good. After canceling it and forcing them to do a 40-minute episode special final season.
How much you want to bet after this season they're going to renew it and come back with something else?
Hey, I don't think they're going to renew it in the same sense of I don't think we're going to get a season 4, but I think they actually talked about one of the characters as a child. The author wants to do that, so I think we can get some spinoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, and I don't know if you knew this, the voice of Bill Cipher, one of the writers of Gravity Falls, works on Owl House.
Oh, really?
Like I told you, it has that aspect of Gravity Falls with like that creepy vibe, but it's still kind of for kids.
Yeah.
That kind of makes sense now. I didn't know that, but no, I love the Owl House, and I think it's great. And I think that's a great example of a good new IP. It's fresh. It's not like directly based off anything. It's a great story, lots of character development. It's great, and some of the fights are phenomenal as well. Like you can see the emotion in their fights. What's any other ones? We talked about Troll Hunters.
I just focused my camera, and he gave me a weird look.
I was confused because he just put his hand against the camera. And I'm like, okay, then.
I looked pale, okay?
I am pale. Troll Hunters, Owl House. Any others?
Dragon Prince.
There is none.
Dragon Prince.
Dragon Prince, yeah. Is that based off a book, though? I feel like that one's based off a book.
It might be Google time.
Thank you, Google, for not having to make us go to the library and look for said book.
I don't think I've been to the library in like 3 years, so.
Oof.
It is a trilogy, apparently.
Okay.
But yes.
Because it definitely feels like a book, kind of like The Hobbit or something. Like it feels kind of like that, and then it's just taken off of made a movie adaptation with Sokka from Avatar: The Last Airbender
by Melanie Ron, apparently. I don't know if this
what
is
year did that come out?
Adaptation.
Probably. I really think it's after a book. That's the feel I get from it. When did that come out?
I don't know. It doesn't look. Hold on.
JJ struggling. JJ struggling. Can we get an F in the chat?
We don't have a chat. That'd be cool though.
Yeah, I mean, who says we don't? For all the live people, they can text me F.
Yes, because all of the people listening have your number.
I mean, anyone that's listening is probably at LBC, and they probably know me because who else is going to be listening to Nerd Rant live?
All our 20 followers on Instagram.
Yeah, but they're all from my school. Half of them.
Don't say that. Shh. We're definitely
people that are listening to the recording are going to be really confused, but I love that because it adds to the funniness of the show.
Funniness.
Clap. Okay.
Like your face. Yes, it is based on a book. We'll just leave it there so I don't say anything else stupid.
Okay. I'm still gonna kind of count that though. It's definitely newer. What other ones? Games? Is there any new like game franchises? I would say Fortnite, but that's around 2017.
See, it's
Technically
hard to say a
2011.
franchise because I wouldn't count a successful solo game as a franchise. I would say it would have had to got a sequel.
Something like Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
Um,
I can't think of any games that have got a second game in the recent years.
This one isn't new, but Minecraft definitely I'd say would be kind of successful because they have their really unique game, but they can take that but make it so much more fresh with Dungeons and Legends and card games and books. So I think that's not new.
If Dungeons came out in 2020, then I'd say Minecraft became an IP once Dungeons came out because then they started expanding the brand a little bit more than
they already had like board games, books.
That's true. They did have those.
It just didn't have any other video games. But even then, they had Education Edition, Bedrock Edition. I count that as kind of separate games.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, this is hard. This is the whole reason why we wanted to bring this to light to people, that we need more IPs. We need that creativity. It's out there. We know that. We've seen, for like our Fortnite listeners that watch our Fortnite episodes, all the 4chan posts, they're really creative. I would love half of those as our season. But they're not.
Exactly.
They don't.
If
it's just
people hired the right people, like I feel like authors is an untapped gold mine in the movie industry. Like if they hired on actual authors that have written books to write the scripts or direct the movies, then I feel like they would have an abundance of successful franchises under their belt because these authors know what it takes to write a good story as opposed to hiring somebody who writes movies that could do subpar potentially.
See, I think for that, like they're writing probably decent movies, but what happens is you base it off the book, which is almost always better. It's not the fact that the movies are technically bad. Like, one thing that I like to do sometimes is I try to think of that as its own thing. I'm not trying to base it off as a sequel. I'm not trying to base it off the book, just as its own thing. And when you think of it like it's not as bad. It's the fact that it's based off the book, and I think they don't copy it enough. They don't go from the source material enough compared to something like anime and manga, right? They are basing it off. Like, that chapter is animated. Sometimes they throw an episode in for filler or because they're, the manga's on a 2-week hiatus and they want to get something out, so they do something like that. But that doesn't happen for movies and more American shows.
Yeah, I feel like that makes adaptations kind of difficult because instead of adapting it, they're trying to expand on it because they feel like if they take it one for one, then it's just like not only a ripoff from the books, but with a little bit more content cut out. But there's also more potential for them to have it flop if the visuals aren't significant enough.
Yeah.
I think a good example is, obviously they're good movies in and of themselves, but the Lord of the Rings franchise, I know everybody says that the books were fantastic and it expands on the universe so much more in the books than it does in the movies. And so that's why people encourage you to read the books. And I feel like if you fail to convey enough info in the movies, then people are going to default to the books instead of watching the movies. And that's what they're kind of scared of with adaptations.
Yeah, I don't know any good game series. We've seen some good solo games, like really creative, but nothing new or it's pre-existing, like Dawn Horizon, God of War, already existing. These are probably good games, but they're not fresh enough for what we need. We need brand new. Like, one thing that I know a lot of people are saying right now is gaming used to be so much better because you'd have all these really fresh things. Like, when Minecraft came out, that is so fresh, and now look at all the games like Minecraft that we have now. It doesn't have that same feel because it's not new, and we need more new. Another IP that I was kind of looking up, Cuphead. It's not 2018, it's 2015, but Cuphead I think is a big one.
It got a show, as well. So
yes, it did.
I'd count that.
So not in that 2018 range. I saw a list of the decade, and it looked like a lot of games coming out in 2015. That looked like one of the last big years. We had Overwatch, we had Destiny, Rainbow Six. A lot of those games were coming out around 2015.
Yeah.
So it's been quite a few years for that's for video games, but quite a few years since we got in some big, huge games that were really fresh. So let's see. How do you think we can solve this IP problem? other than them just getting good?
Well, I feel like the biggest issue right now is the hiring world is bias. They're not going to hire the people that are right for the job. They're going to hire the people that are make them look good. So instead of hiring the creative people that can actually come up with good stories, good concepts, stuff like that, yeah, they're going to hire the people that people want them to hire because that's the right political decision.
Because they care instead of caring about making good content, they just care about having their image there so that they can keep their fan base. Ring.
Yep.
Yeah, like I think that's the big thing. It's not the fact that I think it's the fact that these IPs are getting ruined by the writers. Like another IP, I'd say that's pretty big, Doctor Who.
Yeah, Doctor Who.
We could talk about Doctor Who. So let's tell the fans who's the nerd.
It's
of the
me,
podcast.
guys. David Tennant's the best Doctor, and
how many have you seen?
How many whats?
Doctors.
Well, I've
David
been
Tennant?
to the doctor twice in the past 2 months, so
Yes.
it was about 3.
That means he's not dying. Maybe. Actually, that's kind of debatable.
I'm dying inside, guys.
Round of applause.
Yes, me dying is something to clap about.
Anyway, yeah, pretty much other than David Tennant, that's for the most part. You watched some Matt Smith though too, right?
Yes, I watched all of David Tennant, all of Matt Smith, and some of the oh gosh, the first guy with short hair.
The ninth.
Yeah.
Before David.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've watched every episode from ninth until Peter Kimball. I don't remember ninth. I've watched all of David Tennant, all of Matt Smith, all of Peter Kimball, and about half of Jodie Whittaker. I also have an entire encyclopedia, monster guide, etc., etc. I have a poster of the TARDIS in my room. I also have a TARDIS Yahtzee cup with Doctor Who dice to play with it.
I would have thought it would be a Dalek. This just seems like a better cup in general.
It could be. But then also, I do have the 10th sonic screwdriver, the 11th sonic screwdriver, and I forget who had it, but the sonic wristwatch. So I'd say I'm a little bit of a Doctor Who nerd.
This is going to sound really stupid, but they're different? They have different sonic screwdrivers?
Okay, and the show's canceled. Good night.
He just walked away.
And I just died inside. So, did you not notice how the TARDIS is also completely different from 10 to 11?
Well, obviously the TARDIS is, but like...
Yeah, almost
Sonic
everything changes.
Is?
Yes. Google it right now. Google Doctor Who Sonic Screwdriver and look at how many there are. There's like a dozen. Sorry, guys, for his incompetence.
I'm sure.
Anyway, I loved... for me personally, the way I rank it, Matt Smith with Clara and JJ's mind just
they look like lightsabers. My word, there's so many.
So, my favorite is Matt Smith specifically with Clara. Then it's David Tennant, and then the rest of Matt Smith. That's like my top 3 like of Doctor Who right there. Those like but then Peter Capaldi I don't think was terrible. What happened was with Jodie Whittaker, from what I was told, the main writer of the show left when Jodie Whittaker started, which I can see because the writing went to crap. I don't care that the Doctor is a female now. I do not care. I care that the story is weird and crap and just it's just not as exciting as when he's, the Dalek Asylum and he's going in with these insane Daleks themselves are already crazy, but they're insane. They can go insane. JJ, do you know this?
Well, they have brains,
I don't know if you remember this
they?
episode. Yeah, but they're also like practically robots that just destroy everything they see other than fellow Daleks.
But technically, from a technicality standpoint,
but like you look at their character, and it's also rare for them to fight each other. I think we see that very few times. The only other time I can think of is David Tennant with that human Dalek, and they attacked him. Other than that, that's kind of weird. Anyway, this is just turning into a Doctor Who podcast, which we might do one day. Probably not, because I feel like I would be the one talking 90% of the time, which I do already. But
we'll probably eventually talk about it again. But, I do want to say, though, I feel like the writers leaving is something that's been happening a lot recently. Because, obviously, the IPs that have lasted a while, the writers can't last as long as the IP can. So they have to be replaced at some point. So they either quit or get fired from the series. It happens. But I feel like the writers have been quitting more often than being fired because they just don't like where the brand wants to take the series. Another good example, I think, is Lego Ninjago. I know it's a little bit of a stretch on the kids' side, but Lego Ninjago was a fantastic series in its original state.
I love that show.
It was absolutely
so
amazing.
Much. It was phenomenal. I remember when new episodes came out, I was so excited for that.
Oh, yeah.
The new villain, and it was a good villain. Like,
it was great.
The writing was not just the writing, the character development of said character is almost always great. Either them becoming more evil, learning that, or them becoming good.
Yeah, and I think it was after the Hands of Time season where they changed all the animation style that the original writer left the series, and then after that they tried to reboot it into more of a kids formatted series, which in my opinion was not the right choice to go. I know it probably made them more money, but the writing took a huge hit because now the stories are not nearly as good, the character depth isn't nearly as good, and this is a little nitpick by me, but all of the characters' voices are so much higher now, and it's really annoying and ear-splitting.
So I think that's actually another thing we can talk about quickly with IPs. Cocomelon. Remember that whole thing? Cocomelon versus PewDiePie?
Wait, what?
No, listen to me. Like, did you listen to PewDiePie's Cocomelon song?
Yeah.
He talks about, like, why are these people getting millions of views when the kids are asleep? Like, the new audience is kids. Mm-hmm. A lot of shows I feel like are making more of a kid aspect. Another one, Teen Titans. To Teen Titans Go. That's another big IP that everyone loved, but then they made it to a kid franchise. And it's still going because it is making money.
I mean, a good example in the gaming world, too, FNAF started out as like a really dark, grim series, and then Security Breach comes out. It's like a really kid-friendly, like fun game to play.
Yeah, I still think it had some of those horror-esque aspects, but compared to like the Nightmare versions, no.
Not nearly as scary.
I mean, even before Sister Location, that's not even that scary. They have like, really clean paint on them. So I feel like that's just the audience they're trying to go for now, going for that kid. I know Cocomelon's kind of a stretch, but like that's just a big one that a lot of people know. Because you look at it, I don't know if you've actually watched it. I have a lot of nieces and nephews, so I've seen like Cocomelon and all those types of shows. They're very, very like bare bones basics. Like the songs are super repetitive. Like it's a completely different song, but it has the exact same tune. Animation, very basic. It looks like a AI kind of just made it, put something in. The AI made it, but it's making how many billions of views? It's getting how many millions of subscribers? It's making them money, and I think a lot of games, movies, etc. are making that more kid friendly. We see that kind of with Marvel, where they don't want to make it rated R, even though I feel like some of these movies can benefit from that. They want to keep that audience as low as possible. I mean, because they're going to be making more money.
There was a huge debate when Disney bought Deadpool. I think it was Disney who did it. They made a version of it that was PG-13, Deadpool 2.
Yes.
But there was a huge argument over that because then people were scared for the third movie, whether or not it would even have a rated R version. And I think the consensus now is that the third movie is going to be rated R, but it's another one of those things. It's like you really have to be careful with your brand. Like, do you want to try and transition it to being kid friendly and risk like the popularity of that character, that franchise?
Which again, they're scared to branch out. They're just using the same old characters. Oh, hey, here's this rated R character like something like Moon Knight or Deadpool, characters that already existed, but we're gonna make them kid friendly. We're gonna give them a happy-go-lucky attitude and smile and sunshine and rainbows. That's not the character. Punisher? No. Ghost Rider? No. But we see that. Like, they're so much more basic. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Ghost Rider was in that. I don't know if you knew that. one of the later seasons, Ghost Rider was in it, and from what I remember, not as bad. It's not as bad as some of these other examples, but definitely not as scary as what I remember from some of these movies in the comics. Because, like, isn't he supposed to, like, stare into your soul and you see hell? Like, you see your punishment?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah, nothing like that happened.
That's kind of sad.
Yeah, because they're trying to make it more kid-friendly. They're trying to lower that audience rating, which it's just really annoying, but that's just going to... I don't think that's something that can really switch because in the end, no matter who it is, it's going to be run by a studio, and the main point of that studio is money. The writers want to make a game, want to make a movie really good. Call of Duty, they want to make a good game, but it's Activision that's putting all these microtransactions in. I remember when Black Ops 4 was out and they switched from supply drops. They gave you 3 items that could be a duplicate, but you can get like They had reserve cases, which was only 1 item for 1 hour. It can be a duplicate, and it can be as simple as a spray. And I remember there was like an article from the developers. They don't want to do that, but they have to because that's Activision. Because in the end, Activision wants to make money. All these studios want to make money. So that's kind of why we're seeing, Black Ops 7, Modern Warfare 2019, right? Like, because with these sub-brands like Marvel, Avengers, right? Instead of making... That's one thing. How do you feel about that? Having the new movies still being Avengers, even though it's not the Avengers anymore, really. I know in the comics it might be, but I feel like it could have a new name. But they're definitely keeping it because of that franchise, that subcategory type thing.
Yeah, I feel like if they branded it as like New Avengers or Young Avengers or something, seen as like that is literally what they're recreating from the comics is the Young Avengers. If they rebranded it as that, it would bring in a whole new audience. But no, they're scared to move away from the original Avengers title because if they do, then those fans might not come back.
That's something that DC's not scared of with Young Justice, the animated show. Have you seen that?
I have not, but I've heard about it.
It's good. I really liked it. I didn't watch the whole thing, but it was really good. Young Justice. It's like the younger version. Instead of just making Justice League kids, young Justice League, it's a completely new show with the new characters, but they're not trying to make it like what the other one is. They're not trying to make it like the Justice League animated show.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a problem. It really is, and I think we need to start, putting as the community, as the fans, as the fellow users of the internet, we got to put our voice out there. We got to say something and fight for new stuff instead of just this crappy, boring, rewritten for the 17th time stories. Can I get an amen?
Amen. Definitely.
JJ, you talk now. Because you need to do a little bit more talking this podcast.
Wow, thank you. Calling me quiet. How dare? I'm offended.
No, I'm just saying I'm loud.
That's very true. The past 3 podcast episodes, I plugged in his audio stream into Audacity, and it has been 3 times larger than my audio file, and it's like, how in the actual flip-flop do you manage to make that happen? You're the same distance from your mic as I am, buddy.
It's magic, Yeah. Guys, I am suffering. My brain's dying. It is mush.
Indeed.
JJ sees this liquid coming out of my ear, this pink liquid.
You have bubble gum for brains?
I wouldn't be surprised.
You're secretly the Pink Panther? Copyright strike!
Anyway, JJ, talk.
Okay. Oh, here's a good one. We're gonna call back to, I believe it was last year. Mandalorian, hugely popular show, right? This was the foundation for what they're trying to do with Star Wars, which is make it a sort of MCU type thing. They're branching out. They're giving characters individual shows on Disney+. They're making spin-off movies for the franchise, stuff like that. A bunch of different characters from the first season of Mandalorian were set to have a show of their own coming out. One of those characters being, oh gosh, what's her name? Talk while I Google this.
Talk. Anyway, who even knows Pink Panther? That's my question. Like, that's my surprise. We were having a conversation that JJ does not know Hanna-Barbera, but he knows Pink Panther. Excuse me? I just thought of this. Hold up. How do you know Pink Panther, but you don't know Hanna-Barbera and the Jetsons?
Because my mom is old and she overflows things into my brain sometimes.
Tell her to do it more.
Sure. Okay. Well, Cara Dune is the character I was talking about, played by Gina Carano. I'm sure.
Is that the person from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
I haven't watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so I don't know.
I mean, she's on like the front page for like all of the art.
Oh wait, no,
you're there. Follow.
Are you?
I'm thinking. If it's what I'm thinking, I know she's one of the side characters in The Mandalorian.
I don't know. You can Google that if you want to figure it out.
I'm gonna do some Googling.
But
you talk about what.
Yeah.
We're switching places
Cara
here,
Dune
people.
and the sheriff guy were set to have their own spin-off show together. I forget what it was going to be called, like Enforcers or something like that. But then obviously the whole drama with Gina Carano happened, and instead of prioritizing the IP and the story that they had planned out, they prioritized having a good public image and fired her at the cost of the story then suffering. Because they had already put some money into the production of the show, not nearly as much as, any other thing that's been canceled. But I feel like that show would have been a huge hit because people loved those characters already. And that was the start of new characters. Like, that would have been a new IP show. Yeah, Fennec Shand. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's Boba Fett, by the way. Not Mandalorian.
Okay, I don't know. They look identical.
No, they don't. No, yes, that hurts me inside.
I'm making you triggered.
No.
I'm making you triggered.
No. One of them is green and one of them is silver. Are you colorblind?
Probably.
I wouldn't doubt it, honestly. Are you okay?
We can't talk while we're live. Keep talking. I'm dying.
I'm concerned. But,
okay.
but did you hear what I was saying?
You should be. No.
Oh, okay.
The audience did.
Yeah. Cara Dune.
It's not like I'm going to help the conversation anyway.
But Disney fired her because she said a political thing and
politics.
Yeah, politics got involved. But they're making these decisions at the cost of the story and the franchise instead of prioritizing making good content. And I feel like that's not something they should be doing.
Yeah. So let's see. We covered games. We don't really read books, but we know it's happening there too, like the amount of sequels for books. We covered games, movies, some shows, some big IPs, some small IPs. Anything else you want to cover? Because we are getting close to the end of our show. Dun dun dun.
Indeed. I thought of another.
Any other big IPs you want to talk about? Oh, is it a new one?
It is a new one. Here, let me
Newish.
Let me Google. It is a book series called.
No, it's a book. After I said we did talk about books. Good job, JJ.
Yep.
Round of applause.
Yep. You made me think of it. Let me see when did it come out?
Is it Castaways from Backyard again?
What? I'm sorry, what?
That is the first thing that came to mind. I was just thinking of something. I'm like, Castaways Backyard again. Sure, we're going to say that.
Bruh. Oh, wow. Okay, no, this series started a long time ago. I thought it was new.
What is the series?
We found it in, 2018. It's called Keeper of the Lost Cities, but it's a book series that's been going on since 2012, apparently. There are, 8 books in the series with another one coming out next month.
Magic Treehouse.
Silent.
I don't know.
But no, this book series is actually set to get a movie by Disney soon, so we're gonna see what happens.
What kind of movie do you think it's gonna be? Do you think it's gonna be more like, what is it? Luca. Do you think it's gonna be more like Luca or Treasure Planet?
You mean in terms of like animation?
Like the type of movie, like because I feel like, do you think it's gonna be more original, like a Luca story, or do you think it's gonna be Treasure Planet's a movie book adaptation?
I
So do you
definitely think
it's
they're
gonna
going to
be
go book adaptation because this is one of those projects where the author is involved in the project. So I feel like
okay?
it is going
So
to be.
chance of success.
Yeah. They're probably. The smart move would be to just try and adapt the first book for now, and then they can keep going if it succeeds. But knowing Disney, they're probably going to try and like stuff one or two into a movie. So we'll have to see how it goes. But I feel like if they manage to do it right, then this will be a hugely successful franchise for them.
Actually, question: when do we get a lot of those movies anymore, like Treasure Planet animation style? I feel like so many movies are 3D. We don't get movies like that much anymore, do we? Unless they're
I'm not
like
sure.
anime or something. But like a lot of these movies are not in that art style. They are more 3D.
Yeah.
Even if they're 2D, they're 3D.
That is true, yeah. I think. See, that's the thing. 2D animation, I believe, at this point is more expensive to make than 3D animation because of the amount of tools we have.
I think
for
it always
3D.
was. Like 3D is like, it has all these extra tools to make it done, to make the animation happening. But like some of my favorite DreamWorks movies is like the Prince of Egypt. Like that's a
I don't
phenomenal
think
movie. and
DreamWorks has
that
made a
2D.
2D movie since that one.
And that's what I'm saying. Like that era doesn't exist anymore, and I would love to see some movies in that style again. I think that can do really well too, because that's gonna branch off from the normal movie style. It's gonna look so much different.
Yeah.
And if they do it well, like imagine that, but with like the type of money and the resources now, even if it's more expensive than 3D, they're still gonna have better resources than they did making Prince of Egypt 20 years ago almost.
I mean, I feel like a good example is Dragon Prince, right? That's a 2D animated series. Obviously, it's a little more. What's the way to put it? Like, it's not.
See, that's
not
what
like
I said.
Disney
Like when I said
quality.
2D, 3D, like it's 2D, but it still has like that. It feels like a 3D film. Like looking at it.
That's just how they animated it, though, because you can tell it is
Yeah.
actually frame by frame animated because of like the little skips and stuff in there. But it is a 2D one, I'd say, just differently shaded to make it look 3D. But I feel like that is a good example of the success that category has, like the potential that category has. If they were to put a bunch of money into a 2D production, I'm stuttering. Give it be a show or a movie, I feel like either one would end up working out hugely for them.
So, final comment, because we got to end it like right now. Final comment.
Get yourselves
Get
together.
good movies. Thank you all for watching. Peace out.
Goodbye,
Bye.
everybody.